Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very important segment. I'm going to explain how John Durham, the special counsel, just refuted the two primary defenses of Clinton and of the attorneys representing Michael Sussman, who was indicted for lying to the Bureau Legal Counsel. Okay, the top attorney, or one of the top attorneys working under James Comey. I'm going to explain two of the primary reasons why their defense makes no sense. First, they say that Tech Executive 1, Tech Company 1, or Tech Executive 1 and then the tech company that he owned, and Michael Sussman, engaged in activities, compiling a white paper, gathering information on Trump, a list of people that he was communicating with or knew, his internet traffic, the internet sites that he frequented or utilized, or as much information as they could derive from the office of the president, Trump Tower, and other locations. They claim that, number one, that was all done prior to him becoming president. Okay, that is completely irrelevant. What is relevant is that they were allowed access to obtain that information. So, A, what's relevant is that they compiled the information to begin with, and that Sussman was paid by Clinton to compile that information. B, it's irrelevant that the surveillance or the acquisition or them obtaining data happened before Trump was actually in the Oval Office. Of course he wasn't going to let these people try everything possible to set him up and frame him. So yeah, so they were able to obtain all that information prior to him becoming actual president, or prior to him being inaugurated in 2017, in late January 2017. Why is that so difficult for the media to understand? So Vanity Fair ran an article, you'll never believe this, but Hillary Clinton didn't spy on Trump. It's like, well, yes, she did so prior to him actually, or at least the activity that a lot of the activity, perhaps not all the activity, but a lot of the activity that Durham cites took place prior to Trump actually, getting into the Oval Office. That's irrelevant. The information was obtained somehow through the tech person's expertise, Tech Executive 1, through his use of other technology experts running on government contracts, by the way, at a university. He was able to utilize and obtain and acquire all of this data. The point was, Michael Sussman was paid by both Clinton and apparently, possibly Tech Executive 1 to obtain this data, make it seem that Trump was working with Russia. The data, the information was obtained prior to Trump becoming, entering the Oval Office, but that's completely irrelevant. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Hit subscribe to the Stock Market Crash channel below in the pinned comment. What have I been telling you about the stock market crash? What did I tell you about Putin eventually, mashed potato brains, getting us into a nuclear confrontation with Putin? He just went ahead and launched a major nuclear drill. So I talk about that in the segment prior to this one. I'll have a live stream this evening at around 5:36 p.m. Pacific, so be here. But ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel. Number one, the biggest defense they have is that, well, we were trying to obtain derogatory information and all his internet usage and data belonging to Trump and people he worked with and people he knew via the internet. We were trying to obtain that and trying to link him to Alpha Bank through an absurd narrative that they conjured up and utilized all the data and information that they acquired to fabricate. We did that before he became president, or we did that before he entered the Oval Office. So what? So what? The surveillance continued in other locations. Perhaps not the executive office of the president, but the surveillance was able, they were able to surveil Trump prior to him entering office. What's so difficult to understand? And they did so with the intent. They did so with the intent to set him up and frame him. That's number one. Number two, so when they say, well, it happened prior to Trump being in office, the information that they were able to obtain allowed them to engage in further surveillance after he entered the executive office anyway. So that's completely irrelevant. Number two, they say, well, it was our patriotic duty. We found information that was very suspicious. Well, it's not the Clinton campaign's job to protect national security from the fabricated hoax that they create pertaining to Trump being installed by the Kremlin. So that's not. So what they did was, and what they did was the following: they created a pretext to continue to investigate him forever. And they said, well, the DNC email showed Bernie Sanders was cheated. So the Russians wanted us to know that Bernie was cheated because the DNC emails were not classified. Clinton had top secret and special access program intelligence on her servers for 4 years. I talked about that last night in the live stream. So, and we listened to Comey's, press conference cover-up, where he says, oh, yes, we had top secret intel. We found top secret intelligence, and we found this and that and this and that, and we don't know. We're not going to tell you how they removed top secret intel. I mean, if you have a military background or a national security background and you're watching, how do you remove top secret intel and then put that top secret intel and special access program intelligence onto Clinton servers? It's impossible, but they managed to do that. Okay, and then Comey said, gosh, owning owning servers for 4 years with a team of people dedicated to running those servers outside of the U.S. government, while at the same time removing data and classified data and top secret data from secure locations within the U.S. government onto those servers, that wasn't intentional. So Comey, Inspector Clouseau, the Boy Scout, who was either a complete imbecile or lying through his teeth, very likely, lying through his teeth, said, gosh, there was no intent. But of course there was intent. The intent was to hide communication. That's why you would use private servers outside the U.S. government. My God, you don't have to be a smart person to even grasp that concept. But apparently, Comey couldn't grasp the concept. So, or President Obama allowed it to happen, and he knew that President Obama allowed it to happen. Whatever the excuse was, they never treated Trump in the manner they treated Clinton. That's obvious. So they said, well, it was our duty because there were reports from Comey and Brennan and Clapper that Russia wanted to install Trump. Well, that whole myth was created because Clinton lost to Trump. So they had egg on their face. It was a political slaughter and catastrophe of historic proportions. So they needed some kind of scapegoat, and so they became the demagogues that they are. They went in. They dipped their hand into a well of Cold War hysteria that we have, this undercurrent of Cold War hysteria in our country that we'll never get rid of, especially now because Democrats have blamed Russia for everything for 5 years. So the wall went down 30 years ago, okay, but the Berlin Wall, but we still have this Cold War hysteria. And we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. We learned that there was mutually assured destruction, Reagan, Gorbachev, all the things we learned. And that's thrown out the window because Clinton lost to Trump. So they fabricated this absurd myth with the help of Clapper and Brennan. John O. Brennan, when he's asked Brennan, do you have any evidence? He goes, I don't do evidence, I do intelligence. And so he's lying through his teeth. So these people fabricated through high confidence this belief that Russia wanted Trump. Even though Russia's about to invade Ukraine under Biden's watch, and also Russia invaded Georgia under Bush's watch, and guess what? Russia obtained Crimea under President Obama's tenure, but under Trump, no, Russia did not invade anyone. So interesting how the Kremlin has something on every other president but Trump. But that's not the narrative that they created. So Russia wanted Trump. Russia's grooming Tulsi Gabbard, according to Clinton. Russia wanted Bernie Sanders to, was helping Bernie's campaign. It is I don't even want to say childish. It is the most absurd, sad, and pathetic excuse for anything that goes against the Democratic Party. Well, Russia wanted it, and they believe it. You have to understand. They are extremely intelligent, really good, wonderful liberal Democrats. They're morally superior. They're good people. They're very intelligent, but they believe the myths that they create. And they do so. They believe these myths because they say, well, why would Brennan? I mean, he's a government official. He's completely apolitical. No, wrong. Government officials you can look at the Nixon administration, look at the Bush administration. The epicenter of corruption in American politics was the Bush administration 20 years ago. The epicenter of corruption has been the Democratic Party for years and years now. And so what took place was Brennan and Clapper helped the Democratic Party with their high to moderate confidence assessments, saying, yeah, we think that Russian Facebook ads were influenced people. And then the DOJ indicted Russian intelligence officials because, they hacked the DNC. But of course, the only evidence they had was Company One. Oh, that's right. Tech Company One was paid by you-know-who, the DNC and Clinton. Just like this tech executive and his company was paid by, or I should say worked alongside the attorney. But there were tech companies that serviced Madam Secretary's emails. And they had her deleted emails prior to her deleting them. There are tech companies that work with Democrats all the time, and the U.S. government just says, okay, well, there's no conflict of interest there. Whatever the tech company says must be accurate. So when Sussman, the attorney, who was paid by Clinton, went to Baker, the top FBI legal counsel, the defense not only was, well, we obtained all this information, derogatory information, surveillance before Trump entered the executive office, so you can spy on somebody before they enter a job. That's possible. I mean, how that concept is so difficult for Vanity Fair and Washington Post and others to understand, I don't know. But the surveillance took place, and it happened to take place prior to Trump entering the executive office. It's still surveillance. It's still surveillance. And very likely, I believe it also took place after he won, because he wasn't inaugurated until a couple of months later. But the defense, the next defense is, well, this was our patriotic duty because, well, we found information and we found a back channel. Okay, all these back channels. Trump is the white whale of Democratic politics. They're still going after him. The Trump organization is in court. So what? So what? So what? What does that even mean? It's not Trump's not going to jail. And they haven't indicted Trump for his tax returns or for Stormy or for anything or for Trump Russia or the Mueller probe. They'll never indict or charge Trump. What they want to do is just rile up their own base. They're the ones who believe myths. When Trump says he wasn't working with the Kremlin, he's telling the absolute truth. When they say that the Russia was trying to install Trump through Facebook ads, they have nothing but the myth they created. So anyway, they then say, well, we had to inform the world of what we obtained. No, you didn't. You didn't have to inform the world of anything because you're obviously obtaining the information not for national security to help the Clinton campaign. Another very simple fact that like PBS and everyone on the left can't get. They just can't accept a political motive from anything Clinton does. They can't possibly believe that Clinton paid an attorney to spy on Trump because, well, guess what? She wanted to just hurt Trump and paint him as a Russian puppet. So this way she could then say, well, it wasn't my fault. I didn't really lose. Da-da-da. And by the way, she's running again, and I want her to run again. I'll be vindicated. And you know what? When Democrats and even the far left, furthest left socialist on Twitter or whatever saying, oh my God, Clinton again, they will all fall in line. Because that's the way left-leaning voters behave. They always fall in line no matter what. Or they lose friends and family and they get disowned because, they're very logical and reasonable people. But anyway, so they had no right or they had no reason to relay information to government agencies other than to set up and frame Trump. The information they relayed was false and fabricated, either false or the narrative was completely fabricated. Durham even has emails with them trying to say, hey, let's please these VIPs. Let's please. And you heard, with Reddit stoned here, you heard VIP. So they call themselves the VIPs all the time. Or are they referred to as the VIPs all the time because they're paying these tech companies or people to help them. And so basically Sussman lied to the FBI, saying, no, I didn't work for Clinton. Now, the one thing I'll say about Sussman is he probably didn't lie. He probably didn't lie because he didn't have to, because everyone at the Bureau was against Trump anyway. Or most of the people who, engaged in top decision-making was against Trump anyway. They were against Trump anyway. So, but he gave that information. The FBI investigated, found nothing. The point is, he did not tell Baker, who is also under oath, that he did not tell Baker that he was being paid to give that information to the Bureau. Paid by the Clinton campaign, which of course would mean a conflict of interest, and that the information was only obtained to harm Trump politically, not because of national security. Obviously, the testimony from FBI officials points to Sussman, and because the Bureau officials don't want to seem like they were just so naive or that they were in on it. Or no, that they were in on it. So what they said is, we had no clue. We really thought that Sussman was acting on behalf of national security. We didn't know that Clinton was paying this attorney. Oh my God, you mean we accepted all this information pertaining to Trump and his communications with Alpha Bank, and we did so, and we actually investigated him because Clinton essentially obtained all that info? Yeah. So they can't possibly be seen as having been part of a government-led effort to undermine Trump, an incoming president. So what they say is, we were duped by an attorney paid by the Clintons, or by Clinton and the DNC. And so Durham in his latest filing refutes both of those absurd defenses. One is that, well, the surveillance took place before Trump was in office. So what? The surveillance, the digital surveillance, you can find many ways to spy on people before they even use a computer or before they even get to an office through digital or cyber means. It's not rocket science. Number two, you have no business relaying information to the U.S. government if you're being paid by a political rival. And the government has no business accepting that information. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. I'll have my live stream tonight at around 6:30 p.m. Be here tonight. Thank you, everybody.